Afternoon. Good afternoon. As I said, I'm Ian Nock. I'm here to actually pull out a little bit of a nugget of information from these guys sat in front of you, so you can learn and be informed by what these guys do. So I'm not necessarily going to do a big set of introductions. We're actually up in terms of the order of, you can see up on there. So we have Matthew, Gary, and Case here, and really we'll just jump straight into it, really. And you might give a little bit of an intro to yourself as you pick up the question as asked. So I suppose the key thing here is considering what we're talking about here today, which is migrating from legacy platforms and the challenge of maintaining app compatibility. And actually, it's also about maintaining service delivery to end consumers in this world of retail devices, operator devices, and everything in between, because there are some in-betweens. So really, I suppose I'll start with Matthew. How do you see the balance between new innovation and the legacy support that you have driving the strategies out there today?
Yeah, of course. So it's definitely a challenging issue. I mean, when we're launching applications across devices, typically, so we're a business that build connected TV applications, and we touch on web and mobile too, but we're often having to launch across older devices where there are big audiences. As an example, in the UK, we have Freeview, which is a super fragmented ecosystem of devices that we have to launch onto, alongside some more modern devices that are much more powerful, like, I don't know, an Apple TV device or high-spec Android devices. So we're having to architect applications in such a way that we can deliver something onto those what we call low-end devices, whilst also producing something that is trying to push the boundaries a bit on the higher-end devices. So it's a bit of a balancing act, and the way we do it is through really like strategically deciding on technical architecture and deploying different versions of code bases on different devices, essentially.
Yeah, it's because actually a little probably pre-discussion we had here, one thing I posited is that the world of the greenfield is gone. Everybody's a brownfield now to some extent. Everyone's got a previous device of some sort. It's not like it was in the mid-2000s where someone just had the television, they had nothing much else, and they slowly were adding smart TVs, etc. You buy a smart TV today, it's all you got. You have that functionality there. Then you may have the odd few sticks. You've got what the operator may provide to them. So moving on, Gary, what about you in terms of that legacy and innovation balance?
So I'm from SmartLabs, and we're a provider of an end-to-end IPTV OTT solution for ISPs and service providers. So as Ian says, there's very little, if any, greenfield out there. So and Matt, you used the word strategic. I think we use the idea of legacy, or the older devices and the newer devices, as part of the entire development process. And we're walking into operators knowing that there are going to be 5 to 6 year old LG smart TVs, or 2-year-old Hisense TVs, or 1-year-old Samsungs, as well as their own dedicated set-top boxes. And we have to have an approach that doesn't kill anybody. It gives everybody a sense of upgrade, a sense of renewed or a newer experience, even if some of the bells and whistles aren't available on these older boxes. I think it's important that the operator still feels they're upgrading their customers. There obviously has to be a cutoff. There are some very, very old boxes out there, but I think the strategic approach to the entire development cycle needs to be in all of our interaction with the operators and the service providers, because, as you said, it's about continuing service. You can't just say, well, sorry, we don't support that anymore. You have to include as much and as many of these legacy devices as you possibly can. Yeah. So it's an enormous conundrum, and I think operators look at moving away from their own set-top boxes as a benefit. We're not buying this $60 set-top box anymore, but actually they're opening up a Pandora's box of support issues, because when there are issues on a Samsung or a Hisense, the person that customer phones is the operator. They don't phone Samsung or Hisense. So it's it's a conundrum. You're moving money, you're not buying the asset, but you're still having to spend money on supporting those customers.
You're buying the complexity.
Maybe.
I actually have a pretty good slide that illustrates that complexity. I'll just quickly flick to it for anyone in the room. Here we go. Boom. So that's just the flavour of the number of devices we work with on any given day, really. And that is just scratching the surface.
You're missing a few still.
You're missing
That's
plenty.
the problem, by the way, because you've got to
Always.
figure out what's missing.
Yeah.
It's worse than the worst jigsaw puzzle you've ever seen.
And I
you don't
know
know which
everyone's
piece
going-
is missing.
Yeah.
But Case, you're in a very different situation with MWare, in that you are coming in with a more of an end-to-end platform as well to pull onto a legacy service, in effect. So what's your perspective on that?
Similar experiences like just discussed, but a couple of additional points to address. First of all, of course, we talk about supporting legacy devices also from a sustainability point of view. On the other hand, you see the companies like Samsung and LG limiting support for apps to a maximum of 5 years. So they're already cutting off, let's say, old smart TVs. And I don't know how it's with everybody in the room, but my smart TV at home is very old and it works very good. So it doesn't support apps, so I buy a device to play my apps. So it's a funny thing. The second thing we see, especially with large operators, is that they have a range of old devices, but not always the what I call the terminal management or the OTA systems to even upgrade the devices. They have sent them out with one app and that's it. And then they ask us, can you update an app where there is no connection to the app? So it's indeed a minefield, and you really have to come up with a strategy before you can really decide how to roll out your new platform.
Yeah.
Having that addressed, indeed, for all devices, you have to switch off certain devices, or the graphical experience is less because of the processing power of the devices is less. So the operators want to often migrate because of innovation and because of more modern interfaces, keeping, of course, the old stuff, because otherwise they have a lot of money to down the drain. But they also recognize that at a certain point they have to say goodbye to all those devices if they would like to keep the innovation going, and they have to in this field. So it's a delicate, balanced situation where you have to get rid of some very old stuff, and you are forced to migrate to just providing apps, or indeed, like you said, buying hardware from the latest environment.
And in some respects, we've been talking here as if the legacy was the broadcast and it's about moving to streaming, but actually now, because we're many years down the line, we've got streaming services and streaming devices that are in legacy mode.
Yeah.
After all, even Apple has quite a backlog of streaming legacy, in the fact that their modern device they've got now from 2021 is it's quite old in the tooth. They're about to release a new one that's a new design beyond just making it smaller, and all of that is huge legacy. So from a streaming platforms, when we're actually replacing streaming legacy, why is it so critical there?
Critical to replace, you mean?
Well, this is it. How is streaming making it even more difficult than, say, replacing a set-top box?
To give you an example, I was at an event recently, and it was a BBC event, and they shared there that in the Samsung range of televisions, 2016 is their most popular device. The 2016 Samsung. 2016 is their most used Samsung device. So, in that instance, they must obviously be discussing that with Samsung, and therefore keeping that device on because the audiences are still using it. And for new greenfield apps, which, as we've said, are few and few, when you submit them, you can only go 5 years back. But in the UK, a lot of the audience is still on the 2016, devices.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The TV is still good.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's quite funny because you say 2016. I know why it's 2016 rather than, say, the 2012, 2013, because quite famously, BBC and iPlayer doesn't support those at all, and couldn't from the start because it fell outside of their requirements for the entire platform. So, they could have been supporting 2012 and 2013 devices still, if they hadn't already found a major issue that stopped them being able to support them.
Yeah,
there's also a business model behind the scene. They would like to push new devices, of course.
Yeah. But when we launch devices on Freeview, like some of those Freeview devices are as old as 2012, and you're suddenly having to make a decision on, is it worth us going through all the pain and the effort to get the application to support a device that's that old? And then you get into very complicated conversations with the likes of Freeview where we're like, we kind of need to see the data and the numbers of audiences that are on these devices, but maybe they're not so keen for you to see that because they want you to be everywhere. And there's always this like to and fro of like, you know, which devices should we deprecate, which devices should we decide not to support, and you're always going to upset certain audiences when you make those decisions.
And of course, we're all human as well. And 2016 doesn't sound that so far away, but hey guys, it's 9 years.
9 years.
And you're speaking about someone who's got a 2016 device. Actually, I've got a 2018 TV, and like, it was a lot of money. I've got that device. I'm using it. It's still a great TV, and you know, it's But how about you? You can say something, Gary.
Just coming back to the operator world, we specialise in the legacy set-top box migrations and upgrades, and that has traditionally been a Linux environment. So we're talking about upgrading, you know, VI old Motorola boxes or Aminos or Aris or these types of boxes. We've started to see now AOSP boxes going through an upgrade process. So sort of that move that in my mind happened, you know, yesterday when everyone moved to Android. Actually, we're already in a second generation of those Android boxes. So yes, we're still upgrading the Linux boxes and managing those, which is great. But now we're talking about upgrading the Android boxes. So as you say, it's a continuum, and absolutely, you know, it's a train that
This is we're on Android 16 now. A lot of those first Android TV boxes are Android 10.
Yeah,
4. We still
even some Android 8 ones.
We still get requests for support for 4.
So it is the fact that I think we'll always say that there's always a legacy. It's like there's always a next generation.
Yeah.
There's always a legacy. So what do you see about the balance between that next generation side, about driving your service forward to have all the bells and whistles, and yet still bring those customers on legacy with you?
Well, in countries where, let's say that they're a little bit more developed, people are used to buying Android TV set-top boxes. But if you talk more about countries, low-cost countries in Africa, Asia, some Latin American countries, they don't. What we quite often see, they don't take the whole picture. So they say, I would like to buy a very cheap set-top box. They talk to Chinese vendors and they buy maybe Android 8 or 9 or something at a very low chipset. In the end, they would like to have a very advanced user interface and features. And that's where the discussion gets complicated, because they 9 out of 10 already committed to the hardware, and didn't think about, okay, what is the processing power I need to be able to offer all those graphical fancy features.
We all know that a lot of Android boxes scrimped on the RAM. Let's face it.
True.
And they also scrimped on that flash as well, and that's challenging.
True.
Yeah.
So when we start projects, we always try to take that total ecosystem in a discussion and then really show the benefits from the one against the other.
Yeah.
And then quite often they move to app-only services. But again, like you said, then you're involved in a more intensive support mechanism, because people use old smart TVs, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a shift. It's a shift of effort. Yeah.
So that's all about the commercial devices and the consumer devices people have. But what does that mean in terms of standards, for example? How do standards apply? Because I referred to the Samsung 2012 device, and the issue there was not supporting the DRM capability that the BBC needed to have for the future. But how do you see the dance between industry standards falling behind new device introductions, whilst at the same time being in advance of the legacy that people are still out there supporting?
I think unfortunately in our world, standards tend to increase fragmentation. We're in situations a lot. Again, Freeview is a great example where there'll be HBB-TV spec standards, but not all of the device manufacturers actually follow them as they should do. So as developers, you're told to develop things in a certain way and it should work, but in reality, because every different manufacturer's interpreted the standard slightly differently, things don't quite work. And then more recently, obviously, we have devices like the Freely device in the UK, and that's not on every single TV out there. So now we've got some Hisense TVs that are a bit of a hybrid setup, and it's, you know, standards are obviously needed, but it feels like standards are created in small silos of the industry, which ultimately creates more fragmentation.
We talk about set-top boxes, Linux, ASOP, Android TV, we talk about smart TVs. But if you look to the number of implementations you have on Android phones, the range of different implementations is huge. So on a regular basis, we get devices that don't support our app, and then when you get them to your office and you see what's happening, that they didn't do a full implementation of Android or a correct one because they cut corners somewhere or excluded particular libraries. Yeah. So it's not only on the devices the operators, let's say, promote themselves, but it's on any generic device you buy in the stores.
Yeah, too many options, I think.
Too many options.
Yes, yeah. So, Gary.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to get on my high horse ready. I think no one polices the standards. So the beauty of standards is there are so many of them, and you can apply, and people have applied them in different ways, and they will all claim they've applied the standard. But it's, I think for our job is to sort of try and smooth that process out and to assist the operator to launch in a professional way. But I think relying on the standards at the moment, I think leads to fragmentation, as you say. And, if you look at most of the smart TVs, they all work basically in a browser environment. And they all use a Chromium-derived browser. So why are they not all using the same implementation of the standards? There's no excuse. Really, but commercial drivers have driven them to differentiate and driven them in different directions. So whilst we would like to be, standards are great, and we all actually, whilst it's in such a commercial, innovative, fast-moving market, they sort of get pushed to a side slightly.
Well, there's always that XKCD comic, the infamous one now, where a guy says, "Oh, there's 11 standards. Why do we need 11 standards? There must be a way of having one standard." The next one is, there are now 12 standards.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing to add. So what you see with a lot of existing operators that are strategically thinking about migration is that one of the elements is, besides innovation and that they have to move on, is that they also are, let's say, that the effort and the money they have to spend to keep supporting all those devices themselves, if they do it in-house or with different companies, that more and more we get requests from those companies that they would like to get rid of that work and then probably call one of us to help them. And okay, you do the work, you should assure that it will work on all the services, and we can concentrate on content and marketing. But we would like to get rid of the technology battle to keep it running on all those devices with all those changes all the time. Yeah. So we see a growing interest in providing that in obtaining that end-to-end platform that basically covers the whole story.
Okay, so. Of course, you've now got this full massive range, like it shows on the diagram, of all these different devices. How do you make them consistent in terms of their usability? And, I'm sure all of you can jump in on this one, but maybe?
I think you kind of accept that you can't, right? You can't make it consistent across every single one of those devices. You've got to accept that there are trade-offs. Like, if you've got a really nice animated interface that presents a beautiful user journey on a Apple TV, you're not going to get that on maybe a small set-top box in a regional market from the likes of RDK, for example. A lot of our job as an agency that build this stuff actually is to, at the beginning, have that conversation with our customer and go, right, okay, just to help you understand, we're going to design something here in a couple of different variances because we do need to, water down the experience a little bit for those lower end devices. And then even when it comes to video playback, like the more features and functionality you pile into the video player, the more complex it gets to run the video, which is surprising really, because you think it's a TV device, it should run the video easy, but no, it's one of the most unstable, complex parts of any application. So if you're starting to include things like mid-roll ads, pre-roll ads, DRM, subtitles, multiple audio, buffering windows, your high-end devices are going to be able to take all that on, but the lower-end devices potentially not. As a good example, that kind of DVR buffering window, it's a typical strategy of ours to reduce that down to 5 minutes on really low-end devices, because the more of that buffer you keep in memory, the more likely that player is going to crash. So there's lots of little strategies like that you have to implement. It's not really possible, I would say, yet to get a really consistent experience across all devices. And that's true because the likes of Disney don't even do that. If you've ever used Disney Plus on different devices, there are variances for that app across the different devices.
Gary?
Yeah, I very similar. I think you have to, for consistency, we look at consistency of look and feel and language and terminology and sort of button click journeys. But with regards to the UI, I think that's where the biggest compromise occurs. So you have to remove animations. You have to, obviously no app support perhaps on some of these older devices. But the consistency, I think, for most of our operator customers is about brand and brand recognition, and you can still put effort in to upgrade that look and feel and the latest logos and colors. But the actual animation and the user journey may be quite significantly compromised. But that, again, it's that trade-off, and I think it's open conversations with the operators that that this is going to have to happen. But for us, I think it shouldn't stifle the pushing the boundary at the high end, because these new devices, that's where the innovation is really going to happen, and I think that's where our innovation focus is certainly on. We're not. We can't do that because we can't do it on this old box. I think you really have to push the boundaries. I think we owe it to our customers to try and push the boundaries as much as we can and not be dragged down by these older devices.
Case?
Agree with user experience across all devices. That's, I think, a key element, which we have addressed with a no-code app builder. So we develop a whole suite of features and functions and widgets that can be used across all devices, and we will take care that they will run properly. So basically, compare us with an ERP system, but then for your TV business. And you get a suite of tools and the features and functions, and we assure that it will run on every device, no matter how you use it, and we will take care of the consistency.
Yeah.
So that will help. Indeed, if you have to keep going on with your innovation, because quite often that's driven by the operator that says, oh, I have seen that feature or function or something that Netflix have, I want to have it as well. So you have to keep going. Yeah, and then as a result, maybe they have to get rid of very old devices or have a limited experience. Things like animations, like you said, very interesting to have it and to use the benefits of those high-end devices. But in the end, it's for an end user quite often not critical. He just wants to watch content. It should stream perfectly also on an old device, on a bad connection. And in the end, that's what it's all about. So if it's less animation, it's fine.
Yeah.
And we cover that.
Okay, so a few years ago, I was in a panel with Matthew, and one of the things that came up then was not only do we have all these different devices, but there's all the different languages, APIs, the technologies that are involved in all these devices. And the concern then was there was just too many, and there was no way of bringing them all together into a single platform or a single way of management. Are we saying that that is now a solution that is part solved or fully solved? What do you think, Case? Are they more similar now than they were in the past, or have we done some special magic?
Is it special magic? I don't know. We try to limit the number of code bases to make that work more simple. Can you work with Lightning on all the Smart TVs? Can you work with React Native? Can you work with React to limit your development cycles and the number of code bases you have to maintain? That's a continuous journey to improve that. And on a regular basis, you have to get rid of your old stuff and really start from scratch to make that jump, to make your life easier. In the end, to also keep the speed of innovation high and the total cost of ownership for the operator low. So, to be honest, on a regular basis, we throw away all the stuff we did and we start from scratch to exactly do what you just said.
Well, that's a technical debt issue.
Yeah, but if you don't do it, you end up being a legacy system yourself. Yeah. So
that's it. Escaping being the legacy is the key factor here.
Absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I see you nodding there, Gary. You got that?
I think I think that's a great philosophy. Really, throw it all away, start again, in the most positive way to stop being the legacy. Because if things are moving so quickly, and I was going to make the point of the direct-to-consumer streaming platforms, the Netflixes, the Amazon, the Disneys, I think have been amazingly beneficial for the UI innovation aspects of our solutions. I think they've really set a pace and competing amongst themselves. They've invested an absolute fortune. Yeah. But I think that's been really good for everybody, because I think everybody's UIs are now quite eye-catching. They look a bit different. If you go back a few years, it was all very static and not very cool at all. Whereas I think And I put it down to the Netflixes and those guys that are really invested.
They really push in user
push that
interface
envelope.
innovation.
And I think that's got to be beneficial for everybody. To answer your question about has it got any easier, I don't think it's got any easier. I think the numbers might suggest, there are perhaps fewer than there were before, but it's still a daily conundrum. It's still a balancing.
So that's the key thing. As it's not got easier, but has it got harder?
Well, and
I think perhaps we're getting better at it.
the new stuff comes more frequently and faster.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like you said, the static user interfaces, we had them for years, and now you see innovation on one of those major consumer platforms almost every couple of weeks. They have something new, which everybody wants to have. So,
there's still you've still got lots of operating systems out there and lots of languages that you need to write in to be able to deploy everywhere. Primarily, I think you mentioned Lightning. Yeah, JavaScript is used across most of the web devices, but they have all got different browsers. So the browsers don't all support the same JavaScript APIs.
Yeah.
Then you've got BrightScript on Roku. So if you're launching in America, you've already got 2 code bases that you need to spin up. If you want the best performance, you're going to have to go native on Apple and Android. So there's so many different ways in which you can build now. There's a complex piece at the beginning of any project just to figure that bit out of, how many code bases do we want? Are we going for the best everywhere? And that probably means we've got 4 or 5 code bases. Or are we going for low maintenance, quick output? What I'm seeing a lot of the device manufacturers are doing now, and RDK is a great example of this, is that they're changing the set-top boxes to allow you to deploy your app in multiple different ways on it. So you can submit a URL of a web app, or you can also submit an APK. So they kind of like allow you to if you've already got an APK, just provide that rather than having to go down the route of also building a web-based approach. So maybe that's their solution. Their answer to it is to try and be more flexible in the kind of applications that they allow you to submit, but that might get a little bit tricky in the long term.
Yeah. And of course, since you were involved in that conversation 3 or 4 more years ago now about the complexity of all these different platforms, do you yourself personally feel more comfortable now, or have you got used to it? In other words, have you been beaten?
We've just got really good at doing it. Essentially, I think that's been our way of becoming more efficient, because there isn't like a silver bullet. So our approach and our process has just been refined over the years so that we're pretty nifty at, like you say, like burning it down and getting all these apps out every time. I honestly, from where I'm sitting, it just seems to get more fragmented, and I think I always try and compare it to the mobile market that happened, and then we were left with iPhone and Android. But I think the world is in a very different place now, and all these different TV manufacturers and vendors and devices are coming from all over the place. And there's Roku in America, that's always going to be popular there for the short term, and then you've got devices in Asia that are popular like Samsung and LG. So I can't see a world in which any of those are going to give up and just give the global market up to the other competitors. I think we're always going to be in this kind of regional world, and then when you start thinking about regions and think about operators, they still have really powerful connections with their customers. So deploying an app onto an operator set-top box can be really, really successful. So it just looks like it's going to continue to be fragmented. Yeah. And what I think will probably happen is there'll be some radical shake-up in the interface, or how we present content, maybe through conversational AI or something like that. And that will be when things start to shift.
I keep a tracker of all the different OSs, because I got a special wrinkle about that, because of the fact that I hear a lot of people keep talking about this consolidation, and actually, no. It's not. There are, I think I've counted 24 separate different OSs. I think I might have to add another one. I've heard of another weird little one that's just popped up, but it's always the case. They're not going down. For every Panasonic removal of Firefox OS, there's an addition of yet another flavor of Android OSP. Which is effectively what we've got now, actually, with some of the things coming through from the trading desk and things. And sometimes it's not even clear exactly what they've come from. And then you've got to sit there and figure out, well, how am I going to port what I've got to that?
Yeah, not only that as well, but every single device has their own set of APIs that they'd want you to integrate with to do things like analytics and tracking, or native video playback. So even if they're a modern device that's using a browser that you can easily deploy your web app to, you've still got work to do to integrate with their device specifics, APIs and expectations.
Yeah. I agree with you that you see a lot of new stuff coming. TV brands with their own operating system, their own ideas. We get a lot of requests. Oh, do you support this platform, that platform? I say, okay, what is your install base? Yeah, they just launched, so they have 1,000 units in the market. So is it worth making an app for it?
Yeah.
Will you get any more subscribers because you support, maybe from a marketing point of view, a certain new device? I don't know.
Yeah.
And quite often you can then balance the discussions and bring it back to the volumes. Everybody wants to have his app on Apple TV. If we look at our statistics, it's the less used device you can find in the world.
Yeah.
Why? I know why, but because of prices and target groups. But so every time it's a matter of what is your strategy, where is your audience, and what are devices you need to get you access to that audience. And that's, I think, where the discussion should start. And then if a new TV brand comes, okay, when it has a big install base or you have a joint promotion, then it's worth doing something.
Yeah. And also, what we've been talking about today about the move of legacy, the legacy we have, the new developments we got and where we are today, it's very much a mature market. And one of the areas of very, very deep maturity is the network stack that you have to work with. So adaptive bitrate, you all feel very comfortable with that. You've got HLS, you've got Dash, you might have low latency variants of that. You've got the CMAP variants coming through. You're all feeling very comfortable with that. But we're on the edge now of a next generation of network stacks based around possibly media over quick, all those sorts of formats. How do you feel about that coming? Do you see that as being a disruptor for the platforms that you've got now? In other words, is that going to be? So? I did point reference to the Samsung TV that didn't support particular DRM for a particular dash stream, and it's like, okay, that cut out an entire market. How do we avoid that and that next generation jump that may come there?
The challenge you've got is that people don't go out and buy new TVs very often, right?
No.
Like typically, the lifespan of a TV in someone's home might be 7 years. So it's all well and good these new things being released onto the new TV devices, but we've still got to support this backlog of TVs that are still in market. I think the only thing that will really truly drive that fragmentation going away, I think, is a TV being released that is truly innovative, that is introducing some new functionality that previously didn't exist, that makes people go out and buy it because it is benefiting their life. I think people sit on TVs for a while because they're just, I could go out and buy a new TV. What's it going to do for me? I might get a slightly better picture. Maybe the operating system's a bit different. Like, that's not enough for me to want to go and do that. But if a TV come out that was truly innovative, then I'm not saying that to dig on any of the vendors because TVs are great. But if it was truly innovative and had, maybe there's some cool AI functionality or a video camera that enables you to do more voice calling or video calling, like something like that just cause people to push out and just upgrade.
We'll hold that one for a moment because I've got my own view basically about purchasing that done by people about televisions. But Gary, what are your thoughts about that possible black swan situation of a new stack coming through?
I think it's quite terrifying. I remember back to the MPEG-2 to H.264 switch probably about 12 or so years ago. And I was working for a set-top box company at the time, and we were working with an IBM chip that was going to support it. It's going to support H.264. So we go into production, and it didn't, and we ended up in an absolute bloodbath. So that was the last introduction. So I'm sweating now, and it's nothing to do with sitting up here. It's just thinking about you.
It's unfortunate. I've mentioned a new network stack, and you go, "Oh, crikey, what could that do?" Okay, what about you, Case?
So terrifying.
Yeah.
On a regular basis, you see companies trying to introduce new codecs, and as long as it's not a widely supported standard, let's say technology, I don't say standard, because it has to be supported by the devices. It has to be supported by the on the transcoding side to get it all done. Mm-hmm. So before your ecosystem is that mature, end to end, it will take a while before they will take off. Of course, you will see some operators that are really have, let's say, very advanced project, and they will try it. I don't see a lot of fast, quickly newly introduced technologies on that.
So migration.
Take for example H.265. It didn't really materialize in the end to have widely supported across all kind of devices.
Yeah.
So it takes a long time before something becomes widely accepted in the market. Again, don't talking about standards. Yeah.
So all the time, no one should ever think about we're just going to deploy this. It's always going to be an extended period of time of dual illumination stroke operation.
Definitely.
Of having both in the market at the same time.
Actually, it's actually the same discussion as with your devices. Your whole end-to-end platform should support it. So your inputs should be good, your transcoder should be good. Everything you have behind that process should also be upgraded to support that. I don't see people. If it's working fine, why should you make that step? It should be a really big advantage. Same with 4K. You don't see that a lot in the streaming because people don't realize that the streaming costs are extremely high. If you really adopt that for your complete channel lineup and your complete audience. So yes, it's there, but acceptance is going pretty slow.
Yeah, by the way, the hypothesis for purchasing TVs, the reason why we have lots of TVs that are quite old, because actually TVs are not consumer devices, they're furniture. It's got to look right. Yeah. It's got to be the right size, it's got to be the right position, it's got to look nice. It's a piece of furniture. And when I've got it there, it's going to stay there as long as the wallpaper on my walls.
What I see in my friends and family is that they believe that Smart TV is already a standard.
Yeah.
So I'm buying a Smart TV. Yeah, what kind of Smart TV? What is the operating system? They say, what are you talking about? An operating system over Smart TV? They don't really realize that they buy an Android TV, Smart TV, or Vida or whatever there is. They don't have a clue about it. They just want to download an app and watch content.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I make the decision on buying my TV based on which operating system it has. Said no one ever.
Yeah, but you have a lot of insight.
I do,
so.
but obviously I work in this.
Yeah, you're weird. You're going to realise, like many people here at this show, we're weird. Yeah, we're not normal people. You got to put yourself into that position of the normal person.
Hey, that's why I said it.
Yeah.
So
here's the fun thing then. So we're never going to escape a panel at IBC without mentioning that 2-letter swear word, AI. What the hell does AI mean to you? Case.
Yeah, we do a lot on that, but it's also very interesting to see. You can use any word for the eye, idiot, because it's also doing a lot of stupid things. But on the other hand, I have to be honest, it speeds up a lot of things. But in the end, for us, if I should summarize it, the key thing is that you need good knowledge about the domain you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you are able to convert that in good instructions, then you can really benefit from it. For example, we use a lot of software development. But if you're not good in that, you get rubbish. And then you really get lost in time and money and quality. So.
Okay. Yeah. Gary, what about you?
Yeah, I'm a bit more of a supporter, I suppose. We're using it in every aspect of SmartLabs as a business. So, within our development, within our documentation, within our website design, we're using it on a daily basis.
Yeah, same for us.
We were sat laughing earlier on about and literally the first thing the guys went to was ChatGPT and put in a search, and we were using it as a tool for a discussion. I think for our operators, engagement with customers using a chatbot, that maybe 18 months ago, that was a horrendous suggestion. You would never have a useful engagement with a chatbot. They'd want your phone number and then it would all go horribly wrong. Now you can have a meaningful, I feel anyway, maybe I'm just sad and I like talking to chatbots. Maybe I need some therapy. This is not good.
It depends which type of chatbot you're talking about, I think.
But I think, the use of AI in that, that's got to be supporting operators, reducing their costs, increasing 24/7 engagement. Yeah. That's all great. On the network side, that's sort of above my pay grade, but I can't imagine that, when you're doing efficiency stats, deployment type rollout question, that type of, I'm sure it can be adding value there, even if it's challenging your plan or your strategy. I think that's got to be a good thing to do. A big supporter, and I think it's going to accelerate. I think IBC this year compared to last year, there's a lot more meaningful demonstrations this year. Last year it was just everywhere. AI, no one had anything really. I don't think this year there are a few real demonstrations.
AI washing last year, this year it's real.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, really.
Really?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, we're in the ish stage. How about you, Matthew?
I'll come at this from like an audience perspective. As a business, we use AI, but from an audience perspective, we did some research recently with a research partner, and we asked younger audiences, so Gen Z and Millennial, what their kind of media consumption behaviours were in the home. But at the end of this survey, we also threw them a few ideas of functionality that could be in a TV, just to get their gauge on what appetite there was. And 60% of the people we surveyed said that there was appetite for there to be some sort of video calling feature on television. And I think over 50% of people said that there was appetite for them to have some sort of conversationally driven interface on television. And I think what AI could do for television is make it a much more general purpose device in the home than it is today. So historically and up till this point, it's very much been a device for video streaming and, to some audio streaming. But I think there's an opportunity now, especially with AI and conversationally driven interfaces, to suddenly start thinking that maybe the television is where agentic AI can really thrive. Because in reality, if you can imagine you're booking a holiday with your partner, do you really want to sit there and do that on a mobile phone? Or do you want to be sitting in the front room together, speaking to a television with images popping up of potential places you could go and booking it that way? I think that's just one example of where if we get rid of the remote control and make it a more natural member of your household, suddenly the television can become so much more. And when I talk earlier about we need to give people a reason to upgrade their television, I think that is kind of what I think, having functionality like that would make people want to go out, buy a new TV, because suddenly it enriches their life.
Yeah. So we're coming into the last.
I would like to add one thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Another thing I see happening in our environment is that due to having the domain knowledge, I see that for relatively simple functions that are delivered by specialized companies, that with AI they are very simple to replace. So I'm also expecting a kind of shakeout of a lot of simple service providers in the industry that you now need. It's so simple to create your own DRM server. Why should I take it from a third-party company, as an example?
Interesting disruption.
So I see also there's disruption in that field. Yeah.
Okay. So we're in the last few minutes now, and basically I want to give you a chance to actually pull ourselves back to that migration strategy approach, and basically ask you each individually for if there's one primary thing to think of when defining a successful migration strategy. What is the most important thing to consider? Case. Make it short and sharp.
Okay, let's talk about large operators. First, know what you have.
Know what you have.
And then you can make a plan moving forward. But quite often they don't know if you have 10 or 20 different devices installed on a set-top box, and you don't have that overview. You don't know how you can migrate to the future. So first, you need to know what you have, and then you can make your plan.
Okay, Gary.
I think the customer communication is where I'll go. I think that's where we see the biggest issues with migration. Yeah. When the customers say, well, I didn't know that was going to happen. There's nothing worse than everything you look at every day suddenly changes. The menu's on the left, not the right, or it's on the top, not the bottom, and this button that goes. So that customer communication for any solution migration, I think is the key to a lot of headaches and a lot of pain and a lot of upset operators, because it's always our fault. It comes, the rubbish flows down, and it's always our fault that went wrong.
Of course.
So that marketing budget before you do the migration is the key.
Okay, Matthew.
I think go slow initially to go faster. There's loads of decisions you can make on migration very early on that can save you loads of pain down the line, like deprecating devices or building things with a certain architecture can all hugely impact how easy it is to move and be agile.
Okay, good. Well, with that then, I'd like to sort of draw the session to an end. I'd like to thank Matthew, Gary, and Case for their time here. I'm just here as the wallpaper. Thank you very much for your time here. Hopefully everyone found it very interesting. Thank you.